The midnight air was thick, carrying the heavy bass from the club they had left behind as Robin's sedan sliced through the quiet city street. Inside the car, the atmosphere was hazy but sharp. They had had a few drinks and the world was buzzing at the edges, but their focus was laser-locked on each other. Lily sat in the passenger seat, with a quiet smile playing on her lips, her combat boots resting casually against the dashboard. Robin pulled into the underground parking garage of the apartment complex, the tires screeching softly against the smooth concrete before he killed the engine, leaving a sudden, heavy silence filled with anticipation. They stepped out into the chilly air of the garage, and Robin scanned the empty structure to the left and to the right. Seeing no one under the flickering fluorescent lights, he leaned in with a playful, confident grin and gave her a sharp spank on the butt. Lily flushed instantly, her eyes darting away in a wave of sudden shyness as they walked together toward the building's entrance. They stepped into the elevator, and the heavy metal doors slid shut, cutting them off from the rest of the world. The moment the mechanism clicked into place, Lily's shyness completely vanished. The timid girl from the garage was gone, replaced by a sharp, intense gaze as she leaned back against the mirrored wall of the lift, eyeing Robin with a slow, teasing smile. The space between them evaporated as their flirting turned into a magnetic pull, and Robin closed the distance, pulling her into a deep, breathless kiss. The elevator settled on the 9th floor with a soft ding, and as the doors parted, they broke apart slightly out of breath. They walked down the carpeted hallway and stopped right in front of flat number 43. Robin pulled his keyring from his pocket, his fingers slightly clumsy from the alcohol, and shoved the key into the deadbolt. He twisted, but it did not budge. He tried again, forcing it with a sudden surge of frustration, until the metal groaned, and he accidentally bent the key completely out of shape inside the cylinder. Robin cursed under his breath, his face reddening, but Lily did not skip a beat. She placed a cool hand on his chest. With her calming voice, she told him to just breathe and call a keymaker. Robin pulled out his phone, Googled the nearest 24-hour locksmith, and placed the call. The voice on the other end was gruff, making it clear up front that since it was late, night charges would apply at 50% extra. Robin agreed and hung up. True to his word, it took less than 15 minutes for the locksmith to arrive. A massive, heavy-set man stepped out of the elevator, a heavy metal toolbox clutched in his thick hand. He walked up to flat number 43, inspected the bent key, pulled a specialized tool from his kit, and went to working, fixing the issue and opening the door in just 2 minutes. Lily quickly slipped past them into the apartment, leaving the two men in the hallway. The locksmith turned to Robin and demanded $70 for the fix, plus an extra $35 for the night charges. Robin, his midnight confidence returning, scoffed at the price, arguing that he would not pay a night fee for a job that took a mere 2 minutes. Without waiting for a response, Robin used his mobile phone to transfer exactly $70 plus a $5 tip and began to swing the apartment door shut. Suddenly, the locksmith pushed his heavy steel toolbox into the doorway, completely blocking it. The giant man checked the $75 on his phone, and without showing any anger, he calmly asked for his remaining $30. Robin stubbornly refused to agree. In the middle of this standoff, Robin heard the elevator door open again, and his eyes darted down the hall. The color instantly drained from his face. A cold sweat broke out across his forehead, and his stubborn scowl morphed into a panicked, completely artificial fake smile. Noticing the sudden terror in Robin's eyes, the locksmith turned around to look behind him. Walking down the hallway was a woman in her early 30s who looked incredibly rich and elegant. She walked directly toward flat number 43. Robin stammered, telling Rachel what a surprise it was that she had come home 2 days early. Behind the cracked door, Lily froze, standing entirely tense in the shadows of the foyer. Rachel looked at them, a little confused, and explained that her boss had postponed the work for next month. because his wife went into labor in her 8th month. So they had all flown back early in his private jet. She handed a bottle of wine to Robin, looking at him with questioning eyes, and asked what he was doing standing outside the doorway at 11 p.m. Robin began to tell her the story, heavily manipulating the truth to hide what was really happening. Rachel made a move to go inside, but then she spotted Lily standing in the shadows. Before Rachel could say anything, the locksmith looked at Lily and quickly made up a fake name on the spot since he did not know her real one, telling Shakira to grab the toolbox. Lily caught on instantly and picked up the heavy box without a single question. Rachel still demanded to know who she was, and the locksmith seamlessly lied, claiming Lily was his daughter, whom he was giving some field training. The giant then turned his gaze back to Robin, asking for the payment once again. Robin was completely trapped and confused, but with Rachel watching, he had to keep up his fake smile and asked how much it was. The locksmith stared him dead in the eye and demanded $300. Robin was visibly shocked and furious, but with no leverage left, he tapped his phone and transferred the full $300. The locksmith checked his phone, said thank you, and left the building, taking Lily, his temporary daughter, with him into the night.
I met my first serious boyfriend in my final year of college, and the first few months of our relationship were some of the happiest times of my life. Little did I know that our breakup the following year would result in him basically stalking me for 4 years afterwards. He made my life absolute torture for almost 5 times as long as we were actually a couple. And over time, someone I loved most in the world became someone I hated and feared with all my heart. A few months into our relationship, he started to display some increasingly possessive and controlling behavior. It was subtle at first. He'd ask if I'd done my workouts, then gently chide me if I'd been too busy to do them. He'd insist on knowing exactly what I was doing on any given day, and he repeatedly made comments on whatever I was eating. Exclusively positive reinforcement, right? But that somehow made the whole thing even creepier. The fact that he was treating me more like a child or a pet than a girlfriend. I didn't just want to jump ship, I was really into him, and practically every young adult novel I'd read involving romance recommended honesty and communication. So that's what I tried to do, just warn him off that kind of controlling or patronizing behavior, because it was super off-putting. At first, he seemed like he was completely incapable of taking any criticism regarding his behavior, which was yet another red flag. Yet when I assured him I'd be packing my bags if he didn't start treating me like an adult, he relented and promised to be better, but not without what was essentially a miniature temper tantrum. I just put it down to the shock of me threatening to leave, like it had upset me just to think about too. But still, if I'd have been as wise and world-weary as I am now, I'd have left him as soon as he began to beg. For about a month after, he was true to his word. He stopped being so possessive and let me live my life unhindered, yet slowly but surely, he started acting in the same old way. And that's when it became clear that it wasn't so much that he couldn't change, he just didn't want to. I knew the only way to proceed was to just be brave and break up with him so I could move on with my life. The breakup itself was pathetic in the extreme. He cried and screamed and begged to the point where I wondered where the man I fell in love with had disappeared to. It took a while, but in the end, he accepted. A full week went by without us talking, and I honestly thought that was the end of it. But as it turned out, it was only the beginning. At first, when we got back in contact, his behavior and demeanor seemed like nothing more than the regular pining of a spurned lover. He'd tell me he missed me, get angry when I didn't reply and send a wall of abusive text, then follow up by sending gifts to my job, like embarrassing me in front of my co-workers, was somehow going to suddenly win me over. I thought this might last for a week or two at most. If I just maintained my policy of no contact, then he'd eventually lose interest and move on. But he didn't. Every time his texts and calls died down long enough for me to start hoping, they'd start right back up again, as frenetic as ever. It was a real pain to change my phone number, but in the end, I had no choice. For a while, that brought a measure of peace, but instead of giving up, my ex just upped his game. It started when I just so happened to bump into him at the Publix near my apartment. I put the first encounter down to chance, but he didn't make a scene or anything. We just exchanged looks and moved on. But then I started bumping into him on the way home from work too. Whenever I took my dog for a walk and whenever I went for a run. And then I realized it was never just us bumping into one another. He was actually stalking me. Confronting him about it did nothing, and the restraining order I filed was rejected until I returned with photo evidence of us bumping into one another at a multitude of different locations. But even when I got it approved by a judge, he kept the minimum distance of 100 feet, just watching me from afar. Through his actions, he was silently broadcasting the terrifying message that he could do absolutely anything he wanted, standing right there in the distance to remind me that he was always watching. And when that message finally came through, I knew I had to just pack my life up and move across the city. I even managed to get a transfer to a different branch of the company I worked for, but still, he somehow managed to track me down. I repeated the entire process a couple of months later, only this time I moved entire cities. Granted, the other city was only like 50 miles away, so I could easily visit friends and family on weekends, but it was still a big move. Honestly though, I was willing to do whatever it took at that point to be rid of my ex, and that meant purging my online presence too. Yet somehow, he kept getting a hold of my number and my address, like it got to the point where I became intensely paranoid, getting it into my head that a close friend or family member was passing on my information. Maybe for money, maybe out of fear for their safety. I actually threatened to sue the company that prints out state phone books, and they insisted that they delisted me, but still, I kept getting calls from my ex. Towards the end of the 4th year, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't concentrate at work. I was a shadow of my former self. And it all crept up so slowly that I didn't realize how bad things had gotten until I fainted at work. I was offered long-term sick leave, but since the sick pay wouldn't be nearly enough to actually cover my expenses, I had no choice but to carry on with my life, even though I feared it might end at any moment as a result of my own poor health. Just then, 2 months shy of his stalking, having lasted a full 5 years, a friend of mine forwarded me a news story involving misuse of resources at the National Tax Office. Staff members were using insider knowledge to find themselves and their immediate families enough tax loopholes to pay a trifling amount each year, which was obviously highly illegal. But one of the names listed in the story was one I was very, very familiar with. It was my ex. And although there was every chance he was committing the same tax fraud as the others, I knew he was abusing his position for another reason entirely. That's how, no matter how hard I tried to move on with my life, he was always able to get a hold of my updated contact details by looking up my freaking tax returns and other such paperwork. He and his co-workers were looking at lengthy prison sentences for what they'd done, and it seemed like finally I'd get the peace I'd been craving for so long. It might only be for a number of years until he could get out and find me again, but at least it would provide some measure of relief. Little did I know that this peace would turn out to be permanent, as my ex obviously couldn't face the time. He took his own life before his sentencing hearing. I'm not ashamed to say that I wept with utter relief once I heard the news. I know that sounds cruel, but you have to put yourself in my shoes. That man made my life the worst it's ever been for the longest time. It's ever been that way. He made any kind of romantic relationship impossible, and those were the best dating years of my life. Just burned away because he couldn't handle seeing me with anyone else. He wasn't sad at the losses he'd caused me, so I won't be sad about the losses he'd caused himself. It was through his own pathological stubbornness and possessiveness that he came to find himself in such a situation. And if you ask me, he got everything he deserved. Everything.
After the ambulance took my ex away and the police finished their initial questioning, life didn't exactly settle down. The trauma of that night, the shock of seeing someone you cared about do something so horrific to themselves, it sticks with you. For a while, I was just navigating the aftermath, dealing with the police, the building management, getting the restraining order finalized. He'd survived, needing extensive surgery, mostly to repair the damage he'd done to his stomach. He spent time recovering in the hospital before being transferred to a rehabilitation facility. But even with him physically gone and legally barred from being near me, the stress in my life was crushing. Not long after the incident, my company announced another round of massive layoffs due to falling profits. I was one of the 50% who lost their jobs. Suddenly, on top of the emotional and physical toll of the attack, I was facing unemployment, mounting bills, and the daunting task of finding a new job in a brutal market. I felt completely overwhelmed, trying to keep it together, while also living with the knowledge of what had happened just outside my door. It was during this incredibly difficult period that Will became a true lifeline. He lived on the 7th floor, and we'd always exchange pleasantries in the lift or the lobby. He was a black man, about 5'5", with the kindest eyes and a quiet strength about him. We started talking more, sharing frustrations about work and life. He was stable, empathetic, and genuinely kind. Everything my ex wasn't. Our friendship deepened naturally, slowly evolving into something more. He felt like calm in my storm. A few weeks before the next nightmare began, Will and I were heading out for dinner. I was waiting for him by the lift outside my ground floor apartment. We were laughing about some silly misunderstanding from earlier that day, and in that unguarded moment, feeling truly happy and safe for the first time in months, we kissed. It wasn't just a peck. It was a real, deep, passionate kiss right there in the hallway by the elevator doors. What I didn't know then was that my ex had somehow gotten back into the building. He must have been lurking, watching, and he saw us. He saw that kiss. He somehow twisted it in his mind, deciding that was the real reason I'd left him. Not the chaos, the drugs, the alcoholism, or his abusive behavior. It was because I'd found happiness with someone else, someone he saw as less than him, that short guy. Fast forward 3 months from the stabbing. It was an evening just like any other in my new stressful reality. I was exhausted from a day spent applying for jobs that felt like long shots. My skin felt tight and dull, so I'd put on a thick green clay mask and one of those intense recovery eye masks that cover half your face and plunge you into darkness. Will was planning to swing by later. Then the doorbell rang. A soft, polite ring. I immediately thought it was Will, maybe arriving a little earlier than expected. My face was covered. I couldn't see clearly, but it had to be him. I fumbled with the lock, pulled the door open, and spoke through the thick mask covering my mouth. "Hey, come on in. Sorry I look terrifying," I chuckled, trying to sound lighthearted. There was a pause. No familiar voice greeting me. Just a moment of silence, then a slight shuffling sound. I started to feel a flicker of unease, still blinded by the eye mask. "Will, everything okay?" My voice was muffled. Suddenly, a hand reached out, holding something cold and metallic. "Here," a low voice said, unnervingly calm. Not Will. It was him, my ex. "I brought you something, a peace offering." My blood ran cold. What was he doing here? He wasn't supposed to be within 100 feet of me. My mind reeled, but I was disoriented, blind, and caught completely off guard. What are you doing here?" I stammered, the words thick behind the mask. "You're not supposed to be here." "Just wanted to talk," he replied, still too calm, like grown-ups. "Here, drink this. You look tired." He pushed the cold can into my hand. Part of me screamed to slam the door, to call the police, but another part, perhaps foolishly, was frozen in shock, or maybe trying to process the sheer audacity of him being here. I held the can. I have a restraining order," I managed. "Doesn't matter now, does it?" His voice had a strange edge. "Just drink, cool off." And stupidly, incredibly stupidly, I opened it and took a drink. It was some kind of sweet, fizzy soda. I felt an immediate wave of warmth, followed by a strange fogginess. Why are you here?" I asked, my voice already sounding a little thick, my thoughts starting to feel disconnected. "After everything, you almost killed yourself." His voice hardened slightly while showing his stitch marks. "Yeah, look what you made me do. But that's not important. We need to talk about us, about why you really left." I was struggling to keep up. My head swam. The room felt like it was subtly shifting. I fumbled with the thick eye mask, desperately needing to see. "I already told you," I tried to explain again, the words slurring slightly. "The drugs, the drinking." No, he yelled, his calm shattering instantly. That's a lie. It was him, wasn't it? That little guy? I finally yanked the eye mask down, blinking rapidly as the bright hallway light seared my eyes. He was standing there, face contorted in rage, his eyes burning with a resentment I hadn't fully understood until that moment. Seeing him, the reality of the situation hit me like a physical blow. What? What are you talking about? I stammered, pushing the words out despite the fuzziness in my head. Will? What does Will have to do with anything? And why did you come back? The answer was a blinding, stinging slap across my face. I cried out, stumbling back, hitting the sofa behind me with a painful thud. Don't act stupid, he screamed, leaning over me. I saw you, kissing him, passionate, like you never kissed me. You dumped me for that short little creep. I was sprawled on the sofa, my cheek throbbing, my head spinning from the slap and whatever he'd put in that drink. No, I cried, trying to push myself away, my voice weak but firm. That's not true. We broke up because you're out of control, because you scare me. He lunged forward, grabbing me roughly. You lying bitch. I'll show you who's in control. You think you can just replace me? A frantic struggle ensued. He was pulling at my clothes, trying to pin me down. I twisted, kicked, and pushed with what little strength I had, hampered by the dizziness. I felt my top tier exposing me. The panic intensified. I was in just my white, dotted bra. Get away from me, I screamed, thrashing. His strength wasn't what it had been. Maybe he was still recovering, maybe the drink had affected him too, or maybe it was his sensitive stomach. Whatever it was, he wasn't as powerful as he thought. My hand flailed out, nails extended, covered in glittery polish from earlier. My nails, I yelled, not even sure what I was aiming for, just trying to hurt him. My fingers connected with his face. A sharp, agonized yelp tore from his throat. Ah, my eye, you little bitch. He recoiled instantly, clutching his face, stumbling back. I scrambled away from him on the sofa, pulling my broken top around myself, trying to cover up, my body trembling, my head pounding. Then, the doorbell rang. Loud, insistent, cutting through the terror in the room. He froze, eyes wide, darting from the door to the back of my apartment, towards the balcony. Someone's here, he hissed, panic replacing the rage in his voice. He spun around and bolted towards the back of the apartment, towards the sliding glass door leading to the balcony. Get out, just get out, I yelled after him, gasping for air. I heard him fumbling with the door, then the scrape of it sliding open. This isn't over, he screamed back from the balcony edge, his voice filled with desperate hatred. You hear me? I will come back. Then, a final scraping sound, a slight thud as he dropped away from the railing, and silence. I was left alone again, half-dressed, bruised, dizzy, and terrified, perched on the edge of my sofa. The doorbell continued to ring, a relentless, insistent sound in the sudden stillness. My heart hammered against my ribs. My mind raced, the dizziness making it hard to think clearly. But who was it? The cops, responding to noise? Or Will, arriving for our date? The insistent ringing offered no answer, leaving me trapped between fear and a desperate sliver of hope.
Destroyed my reputation. Follower. You could be like that. I never thought. Me. What are you talking about? I don't understand anything. Follower. Don't you know what you've done? Now there's no need to be too innocent. Your truth is out for everyone. A girl like you should be kicked out of this industry. You can do anything for fame. Me. Look, whoever you are, stay within your limits. I am a famous model, so mind your own business. I didn't say anything to him, but I needed to find out what he was talking about. In a few moments, even the media started calling me, wanting to hear my comments about some pictures. I couldn't understand why suddenly everyone was asking me questions about a picture and ruining my reputation. Simply put, the media unexpectedly looked closely at me, hurting my image. To know all this, you need to know about my past. Here's my past. Hey there, I'm Scarlett Wilson, and today was my first day of college. Everyone was buzzing with excitement, looking forward to a new chapter in their lives. But for me, It was a bit different. You see, the day before college started, I had to break up with my boyfriend, John. I told him straightforwardly, "Hey, I can't continue this relationship with you. I want to end it." His response was infuriating. "But how can you do this without any reason?" That's when I dropped the bombshell. "You cheated on me. I know about your relationship with Clara." His feeble excuse was, "I just got carried away for a few moments. Can't you forgive my mistake?" I was having nothing of it. "You cheated on me, and I can never forgive that mistake. Our relationship is over, and it's better if we never meet again." "You can't leave me so easily," he shouted. "I'll make your life difficult," he continued. Little did I know that this threat would turn into a real-life nightmare. Fast forward to my first day at college. I was feeling down, but amidst the sadness, I discovered Snapchat. A friend added me to a group, and suddenly I found myself immersed in a world where I could share my daily life and photos. It was the first time I was navigating a social media platform like Snapchat. As I started sharing my pictures, my followers increased. People were appreciating my face and my photography skills. Amidst all this, a message popped up, one that changed the trajectory of my life. "Opportunity for modeling," it read. I was thrilled. I had been dreaming of becoming a model since childhood. So I eagerly signed the contract. Little did I know that this step would lead me to fame and millions of followers. Life was good, or so I thought, until one day, everything crumbled. News of explicit images circulated. My Snapchat account was flooded with vulgar comments. I was puzzled, wondering what I had done to deserve this. "One successful model can also do such things. I never thought about it," one follower wrote. Another commented, "A model can do anything for money. Today I have seen it. Shame on you, Scarlett Wilson." Reading those comments shattered my heart, but I couldn't understand what had happened or whose explicit images were being circulated. Then a well-wisher sent me a message on Snapchat, pointing me to a fake account under my name. There, edited, explicit pictures of me had been posted. Someone had taken advantage of my Snapchat pictures. Shocked and hurt, I headed to the police station to file a report. "I need to file a report," I told the police officer. The cybercrime unit got involved, and the search for the culprit began. The actions of this unknown person not only caused distress, but also jeopardized my successful modeling career. I had to hide from the media to avoid scrutiny whenever I went out. The media made my life difficult, and on Snapchat, some fans criticized me, while others supported me. The conflicting emotions added to my turmoil, but I pressed on, determined to find the truth. One day, a call from the police station summoned me. As I entered, I saw my ex, John, standing there with handcuffs in his hands. The police officer informed me that he was behind the fake Snapchat account, seeking revenge for my success after our breakup. It was shocking, and my hatred for him intensified. How could someone go to such lengths to ruin a person's life? Today, John is in jail, paying the price for his involvement in cybercrime. The truth prevailed, and with the support of people in the media, my reputation gradually improved. Now I've decided to move forward. Despite the challenges, the support from others has been overwhelming. I'm focusing on my successful modeling career, leaving behind this difficult chapter. It's a reminder that in tough times, the truth wins, and being strong helps overcome obstacles. I appreciate the support I've received and hope for better days ahead. The incident taught me to be cautious. Even on social media platforms like Snapchat, I've become more vigilant about my online presence, ensuring my privacy and safety. The experience also made me realize the power of social media, both in creating opportunities and in the potential for harm. As I continue my journey, I use Snapchat to share glimpses of my life, but now with a sense of responsibility. I've learned to filter out negativity and focus on the positive aspects of my career. Snapchat has become a tool for me to connect with fans who genuinely appreciate my work. In the end, my story is not just about overcoming adversity, but also about the importance of resilience and staying true to oneself. Through the highs and lows, I've emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to pursue my dreams. Snapchat played a role in both the challenges and the triumphs, marking significant moments in my journey. It's a reminder that, even in the digital age, real strength comes from within.
Jumping from the roof of a 2-story building is something that causes immense physical pain, especially when a person is completely unable to pull off a proper, safe landing. It is an experience that stays with someone forever. Years ago, that extreme leap was the only option available to save a life. Looking back from the age of 26, the memories of being 18 and 19 years old feel distinct and heavy. At that time, a relationship with an abusive boyfriend dominated everything. The decision to stay with him stemmed from being young, naive, scared, and deeply convinced that his professed love was real, and that he would eventually change his destructive behavior. The relationship was plagued by a multitude of severe, overlapping problems. Substance abuse was a major component of daily life, which unfortunately created a distorted sense of bonding and fueled the false belief that true love existed between the two. The drugs simply masked the reality, making it seem like the substances were the sole reason for actions and behaviors that had never manifested before. Along with the addiction, there were deep-seated trust issues and a desperate, toxic codependency. The dynamic was a constant cycle of breaking up and getting back together, made worse by his inability to control his hands during his frequent fits of rage. This environment caused severe depression. Family members and close friends chose to distance themselves for very obvious reasons, leaving a profound sense of isolation. To make matters worse, he actively enforced this isolation by making it feel impossible to maintain friendships or even speak to anyone without his explicit knowledge and approval. He routinely checked phone logs while his partner slept and subjected them to intense interrogations. Even working a job became a source of terror due to a workplace with horrible phone reception. If texts were not returned fast enough, or if the poor signal caused messages to arrive out of order, he immediately leveled accusations of texting someone else, cheating, and issued frightening threats. The emotional abuse was relentless, filled with insults and claims that leaving him was impossible because no one better would ever want someone so stupid and ugly. Despite these constant, cruel accusations, no cheating ever occurred. He would even deliberately lie about sleeping with other women, just to inflict emotional pain and watch the tears fall. The emotional cruelty regularly escalated into physical violence, including slaps and choking that reached the point where losing consciousness, or worse, felt like an immediate certainty. The most terrifying incident of all began during a visit to a park, engaging in activities that probably should not have been done in public. The specific details remain hidden out of a lingering, deep-seated fear that he might somehow discover the account, as a profound fear of being found has persisted for years. Nightmares about him discovering the current address and showing up at the house are a regular occurrence, causing awakenings drenched in sweat, a physical reaction that even returns just by recalling and typing the memory. While at the park, for reasons that remain entirely unfathomable to this day, he suddenly began intentionally hurting himself. The sight caused a massive panic, leading to an announcement that an ambulance would be called for his own safety, which prompted him to immediately take off running into the distance. About 10 minutes later, a police car and paramedics arrived at the scene, but he was nowhere to be found. After providing the authorities with the general direction of his flight and apologizing for wasting their time, a phone call came from him about 20 minutes later. Upon answering, he was simply screaming, demanding to know why the police had been called on him. Profuse apologies followed through heavy tears, attempting to explain that the call was placed out of deep concern for his safety, and that the intention was only to summon an ambulance. with no prior knowledge that the police would automatically accompany emergency medical services. Amidst the crying and begging to know his location, he revealed he was on the roof of a building and provided the nearest cross streets. In a state of misguided devotion, the decision was made to go meet him. Climbing up onto the dark roof after sunset led to a conversation where he acted completely normal. The exact topic of discussion has faded from memory, but the prevailing thought at the moment was how nice it felt to simply have a quiet conversation with him, without the usual barrage of yelling, insults, or wild accusation. Then, without any warning, he suddenly pounced, pinning his partner flat on the back with his knees digging hard into the shoulders to hold the arms down. His eyes looked entirely crazy and soulless as he began slapping his victim in the face. One particular slap was delivered with such force that it later resulted in a severe black eye. He screamed continuously, hurling names and accusing his pinned partner of things that had never happened. The assault escalated as he began punching legs and declaring his intention to forcefully have his way with his victim. The rough stucco of the roof caused intense back pain, scraping the skin until blood began soaking through the shirt. The memory of whether he choked his victim during this specific attack is blurred, but the absolute certainty of impending death was entirely real. At that exact moment, survival mode finally kicked in. Through heavy sobbing, a plea was made, questioning how he could do this if he truly loved his partner, reminding him that nothing had been done to him, and begging him to just stop if his love was genuine. Saying those words acted exactly like flipping a switch. His eyes and entire demeanor changed instantly, and he got off. As soon as he turned his back, the opportunity was seized to jump directly off the roof. The landing was horrific, accompanied by the sound of him yelling from the rooftop above. Lying in a crumpled heap in a dark alleyway, the immediate thought was that both the back and feet were completely broken. Hearing him coming down the building triggered an urgent realization that reaching the street to scream for help was the only chance for survival. As he drew closer and attempted to help his victim up, a desperate crawl army style toward the road began, accompanied by a loud scream to not be touched, accusing him of just trying to commit murder. A man standing on the sidewalk across the street became the target for a desperate cry for help and a request to call the police. He presumably made the call as a blackout occurred shortly after. The final vivid memory before losing consciousness was seeing the ex running away into the night with the stolen purse in his hands. The aftermath involved a trip to the hospital and the police capturing him a couple of hours later, after he reportedly put up a significant fight against the arresting officers. Because so much time has passed, the entire ordeal now feels like a distant, bad dream. It remains hard to believe it actually happened, but a deep sense of gratitude for survival remains. Naturally, a clean and sober life has been maintained for several years now. Relationships with family and friends have been fully restored, and life has been reclaimed. A happy marriage to a wonderful man who would never even think of causing harm has brought true peace. The family has grown to include a couple of children, and life is deeply loved. To anyone currently trapped in an abusive relationship, the message is urgent. Please get out while it is still possible. Nothing is ever worth risking your life for every single day with an unstable person. There is someone out there who will offer genuine love without taking you for granted, because every person is worth so much more.